Hi everyone and welcome back. A long time ago I made this video to see if it's possible to create a clear butter slime using transparent clay. It wasn't very successful because the product I used was already pretty dried up. But over the years I've reviewed many other types of transparent clay, and one request that always comes up is to try mixing them into clear slime. So for this video I'm going to mix all the clear clays I have and we'll see what happens. The materials I want to test out include museum gel, UV clay, thermoplastic clay, and this transparent putty called sticky base. The results were really weird but strangely satisfying. Instead of making my own slime, I'm going to use store-bought Elmer's clear slime, which is less likely to deactivate. This is also less prone to air bubbles and should hopefully stay transparent for longer, even when mixed with other materials. The first thing I'm testing out is museum gel. I had so many requests to try this for pretty obvious reasons. This is a thick, non-sticky gel that looks just like slime, and it's used to prevent objects from falling over in museums. It's also incredibly satisfying to play with because it mixes well with ink or glitter and it doesn't leave any smell or residue behind. I'm going to use roughly the same amount of each material for every experiment in this video. These two combine together very well, and I'm pressing them carefully to minimize air bubbles. As you probably know, tiny air bubbles are what causes clear slime to look cloudy, and there's no way to mix it without some level of air coming in. However, what happened next surprised me a lot. I've only sped up the footage a bit, but I didn't cut anything out so you can see it happening in real time. The mixture suddenly turned white, and this is definitely not the result of air bubbles. I'm not sure what's going on, but it has a soft, bouncy texture that reminds me a lot of those squishy balls you can make with Uhu glue. For anyone unfamiliar with this, it's a really silly DIY that we used to do back in school before YouTube existed, so there was no place to learn how to make real slime. It only works with the Uhu brand of glue that comes in these metal tubes. You simply put some on your hand and rub it until it's no longer sticky. I'm only using a small amount here, and it produces a stretchy ball that's really similar to the museum gel and slime mixture. This one, however, is much cleaner and it's made without any of that stickiness. The only drawback of this material is that it leaves a thin layer of museum gel behind. You get these tiny crumbs of gel in your skin, almost like transparent eraser shavings. I'm slightly disappointed that this one didn't end up completely clear, but other than that, it's super soft and very satisfying. Next we have Oyumaru, which is a heat-activated plastic clay. I'm not sure if the one I have here is from the actual brand Oyumaru, but I've used this material quite often in my previous videos. It comes in slightly translucent blocks and you have to soften them in hot water. This makes the clay more transparent, as you can see here. Then you have a limited amount of time to sculpt it before it cools down. I've always found Oyumaru more useful for making molds because it hardens very quickly and I don't like the hassle of always putting it back into the water. I'm going to try mixing the slime in the short window of time when it's still soft. To be fair, this is the only material out of all four where I'm not expecting a crazy result. As predicted, the clay hardens very quickly and it's basically separating from the slime. I ended up with a flat piece like this, and it's obvious that this plastic material is not going to combine seamlessly into a water-based slime. I decided to put this back into the hot water to see if that softens things up. But the main effect of this is just to melt the slime and make it stickier. Next up we have sticky base. This is the only material that I've never used in a previous video, although I've had this around for ages because I was so intrigued by it. The packaging calls this a transparent, self-hardening modeling gel. It also says that it can be used as glue. The back shows an example of the gel being used with the chunky glitter to create a kind of sparkly paste. My first impression is that this is very stretchy, but not crystal clear. It smells just like glue, but surprisingly it doesn't feel sticky on your skin. It's really hard to describe this texture because I can't find anything similar to compare it with. It's kind of like half slime, half wallpaper paste with the elasticity of paper clay. It was actually hard to break a piece off because it just kept on stretching. However, this is definitely water-based, so I'm excited to see what happens when it gets combined with slime. It doesn't take a lot of mixing before it starts sticking to my fingers, even though the material wasn't sticky to begin with. I'm not sure if it's the sticky base or the slime, but it definitely feels like the mixture is starting to deactivate. This reminds me a bit of my slime experiment videos from ages ago, where adding certain things to slime will cause it to break down and turn sticky. As we know from this video, glycerin or acid can deactivate slime, and I strongly suspect that sticky base contains glycerin. It's a common additive to help things retain moisture, and the glue putty has such an unusual consistency that I wouldn't be surprised if it contained that. Right now, it looks exactly like an overly sticky slime that hasn't been activated properly. It has a texture where I keep thinking that I might be able to roll it back into a ball if I rub it long enough, but it's somehow not working. It's still kind of satisfying to make spiderwebs though. Last but not least, we have clear UV clay. This was featured in one of my most recent videos, and once again, so many people asked what would happen if it gets mixed into slime. First things first, I'm definitely wearing gloves here, because unlike the other clays, this one is made from pure uncured resin, which shouldn't go anywhere near skin. The texture is almost identical to museum gel, but it has the sharp, unmistakable smell of UV resin. At first, this didn't combine with the clay at all, but I managed to fold them together in the end. This produced another surprise because it turned white, just like museum gel. However, this one looks really glossy and almost pearly. I love this effect, but the shininess does go away after a while. You are left with a soft putty, which also feels exactly like the museum gel one. While playing with this, I suddenly wondered what would happen if you tried to blow a bubble. Because this contains UV resin, it might be possible to harden it. So I grabbed a straw and decided to test it out. It's fairly easy to blow a bubble, but a bit trickier to seal off the end. My first attempt ended with the bubble deflating before I could really cure it. I tried this again, and even though I kept the bubble up for quite some time, I wasn't able to harden it using the UV lamp. I'm guessing the resin content of 50% isn't enough to cure into a hard shell. This is a shame because it would be so cool to have resin bubbles, but I think that's an experiment for another day. I decided to store each of these in an airtight container and see if anything changes. Here they are 3 weeks later. The museum gel one hasn't changed at all, and it looks and feels identical to when I made it. It still has that milky translucent appearance with a texture similar to an Uhu glue ball. It also still leaves that crumbly residue behind on your hands. Next up is the Oyumaru. Not surprisingly, this one didn't change either, but it's because the two materials are completely separate. The plastic clay is still the same and can be removed from the slime pretty easily. The slime is exactly what you expect after storing it for a few weeks in an airtight container. Now comes the sticky base, and this one has become significantly more sticky. It feels like a very thick glue, and I don't want to stick my finger in here. You can see that it's still very elastic, but it's not in any state to be played with. Lastly, we've got the UV resin clay. This has developed a strange layer across the top, which I assume is moisture from the slime. It smells absolutely terrible though, because this is still uncured resin. I was half expecting this to have hardened, but it's still pretty flexible. I did leave that tiny piece of clay I was using to blow bubbles with close to a window, and the UV light coming through has almost completely cured it. It looks and feels a bit like a hard gummy candy. So now we finally know what happens when you mix clear clay into slime. None of these ended up with a butter slime texture, but still produced very interesting results. I hope you enjoyed this video, and please subscribe for more unusual DIY experiments. I'm Joanna, thank you for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye!